So as I mentioned last month when we talked about the ATV, the state of Wisconsin offered a flex grant. The Department of Health Services, who we fall under, last year offered a flex grant and a couple of different pots you could put money in for. One of the things I put in for was for IV pumps. It's a huge safety thing for our career, demonstrated here in a minute. So we put in some funds for those IV pumps. We were able to we were awarded that in addition to the ATV. It was 5 pumps, one for each one of our ambulances. And again, we've been training on them all last year for some of the different medications we can do, and it's really a huge patient safety thing. So getting back to those funds that the state is giving to EMS agencies that we're able to roll out for that general population. If anyone's been to the doctor or a hospital before, you can see that medication, or an IV, a bag of fluid. It's that little needle that goes in your arm. We take the needle out, the plastic stays in. Predominantly we give fluids through that if anyone's dehydrated. Lots of reasons we can give them. The IV pump can be used to just flow that fluid in there. Big purpose for us is medications. So anything we give through that IV goes right into your circulatory system, works pretty quick. Most of the time we just push those medications in there, or fluids. What the pump does is actually manage the flow of that. So a big thing for us is medication dosing. So one of the examples we can go through here in a minute is, so I need to give 10 milligrams over 10 minutes. That requires math, which we got people who are strong in math, people who are not so strong at the math, but what we'd really like to do is we want to make everything, we call it 2 a.m. proof. All right, so you get woke out of bed with a really sick patient, a really critical patient who now needs this medication, and at 2 in the morning, even though there's 2 of you there and we bounce things off of each other, doing math at 2 in the morning, it works, and it's a traditional way to do it, and we got to know how to do it. But it's an opportunity for errors, and we're trying to fix that, where the pump is now pre-programmed, and I'll show you the set here. We put in there, this is what I put in here, this wants to be my dose, run my tubing in there, hook it up and hit go. One, it's very quick, and because it is pre-programmed in there, it's much safer, because now we should be double checking that math to make sure this makes sense to us, but the parameters in the pump are built in there so that you really can't go outside of those dangerous levels. This is our pump. There's multiple different kinds on here. This one's fairly new to the market. It's really nice for an EMS agency like ours. It is small, it's portable, it's rechargeable. We can only do one medication at one time, which for us is going to be 99% of what we do. So like we would start an IV like we normally would. We have one set up on our simulator here. We always keep one line open just so we have it there. And then you can see from our bag up there, I'm going to use that size bag, but we need to take our medication out of our bag. We would mix it in an appropriate size bag. We carry different sizes. It kind of helps with math. Big orange label on there because water with medication looks just like water without medication. So we want to know that there's actually medication in there. We hook our tubing up there. We flush our medication through there, and then we pop it into our pump. So we'll turn our pump on. So it's turning it on like every piece of medical equipment. It's doing its own little systems of self-check. This is what the tubing looks like. We call this the cartridge. So the cartridge is actually what pops in there. We close that door. We push it until we hear it click. Close our door, and then it's now loaded. It turns on right here. It says adult. We have 2 different modes. Again, those safety backups are just a really great asset for our pump here. We're going to start with an adult. So we'll say, yep, we're using our adult programming. And it comes to, what do you want to do, right? Do you want to do a new infusion, which is an infusion is just to say, do you want to deliver some medication? So we'll hit new. It will pull up historical information. A couple different options. I can start typing the medications in there. I can just choose this general. I can let it go open, or we do have some touch screens with all of them. So easiest one to probably show you is epinephrine. So I'm going to hit that button twice under E and hit find. Comes up all the medications that start with an E. In this case, it's epinephrine. Right? There's only, I believe, about 5 or 7 medications we have in there. It's not a lot of medications that we give, that we actually use this pump, which is another great reason to have this pump. We call them high-risk, low-frequency procedures, high-risk, low-frequency medications. We don't do this very often, right? Which means just another opportunity to potentially make an error, which we don't want to do. So we'll hit our epinephrine, right? That's the medication I want. Pops up, says, what's my concentration? So it says 1,000 micrograms, which is 1 milligram. That's how we carry that medication. So we'll make sure I have 1 milligram, and it says in 250 milliliters. So that's going to be the size of the bag. So that, right, it tells me what I'm mixing. I'm clearly right. This is not the appropriate size bag. So I'm going to put 1 milligram in a 250 milliliter bag. So I'm going to confirm that. So there's 3 things now here. This is kind of where the pump comes in. It says dose rate, volume to be infused in time. So if I actually was doing the math, those are the 3 things I need to know. I would put them on a piece of paper at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd pull out my phone or a calculator and start doing the math. The nice part about the pump is as long as I know 2 of those pieces of information, it's going to figure out the 3rd one. So my epinephrine dose, so my bag said right 1 milligram in 250. So my volume to be infused, that's what VTBI means. 250 milliliters, right? That's the bag I put it in. So it knows that number. So here's where my doses are going to be. I know that my dose of epinephrine for an adult patient is somewhere between 2 and 10 micrograms. I'm going to double check it here. It's micrograms per minute, right? So it's not a weight-based medications like our children's are or our pediatrics are. So it's somewhere between 2 and 10 micrograms per minute. So if I want to start in that load, well, I'll hit somewhere in the middle. So I'll say I want 5. And so it says 5 micrograms per minute. Off on the right-hand side here where it says range, those are the pre-programmed in parameters, right? So I know it's somewhere between 2 and 10. If I can't remember that at 2 in the morning, I go pull out my protocol. But if all of a sudden I'm thinking of some other medication, like, it's 40, and I go in to put 40, it won't let me, right? It knows that it is built in that protocol that it is between 2 and 10. So safety parameter. So I'm going to go with 5. I'm going to hit OK. So you can see in there it says I want 5 micrograms per minute. I have a whole bag of 250 milliliters. It does the math and tells me it's going to take 3 hours and 20 minutes for that 250 milliliter bag to go in there, which is fine, right? That's going to be long after the patient is dropped off. But what it does now is it figures out the drip rate, right? How fast does this need to flow to get that drip rate in there? Now, if I didn't have a pump here, I would have to actually figure this out 250 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes based on that medication that's in there, and I would actually have to sit here and start to count drops. So I would have to figure out how many drops I would need. I would have to sit here and count those drops, which the other factor is as I'm bouncing down the road, I get an extra drop or 2. Depending on the height of this bag, I get an extra drop or 2. So the other thing it does is provide consistency, right? If I put my bag down here, moving through the house, and then come out here into the ambulance and raise it up another 3 feet, that drop is going to different. So I have to relook at that and change those drops. So now that I've verified that, right, I put my information in, it's going to give me one more time, right? It says you want epinephrine at 5 micrograms per minute. You got a bag of 250 mils. We're going to run that over 3 hours and 20 minutes. My concentration is 4 micrograms per milliliter. That's the concentration of that bag. I'm like, all of that looks good. I can verify with my partner. What do you think? Yep. I hit next. Says, what is my drug amount, right? This is, again, verifies the concentration that I put in that bag. And hit start. That medication is now running into my patient. Right, and so it's actually going to sit here and watch that. Now it's actually pretty low drip rate, but it is running in there, and this is going to go back and forth and just verify that medication that is administering. So I can keep double checking that as I'm driving along. But now I don't have to sit here and other than be aware in my overall patient care that this is running. But big bold words here that said you're running some epinephrine in here, and we can go back and focus on our patient care. This is the big one. Epinephrine and norepinephrine is probably one of the more common ones. I would be guessed to say it's 2 or 3 times a month. So it's not frequent, but as I mentioned, right, this is a high-risk, low-frequency skill. Right? These are some pretty critical medications that we don't use very often. So back to the safety, right? It is just a thing to help our help our patients, and an engineering control. We try to figure out how problems happen. One of those things is engineering, right? What can we do different to make sure that mistakes don't happen? This is one of them. This equipment came from the Department of Health Services for the state of Wisconsin. Thanks to our politicians who really recognized that EMS in Wisconsin can use funding like this to really help our population in the state. This is equipment that we probably would have put into a budget in the future as far as a capital purchase, but we have other operational needs. So with the state being able to provide this flex grant to us, we're able to provide this to the residents we have in Fitchburg, Verona, town of Verona, without having to put it in our operational budget, which means it saved an expense for a local population that we're able to use those state funding for. So just really appreciative that the state recognized that we can use these funds, and we implemented them to help our population in our state.